Thank you for the introduction. So my name is Uijong and I'm from Korean University Cognitive System Lab. So today my present title is Personality Trait Predict Sacrificial Decision in a VR Simulated Accident Situations. So you imagine that you are the driver of the car and your brake was not working. You have to force to choose between sacrificing pedestrians and sacrificing you and passengers. What kind of choice would you make? Last year, the moral machine experiment surveys millions of the people from worldwide and found that there's some global preference in this kind of dramatic situations. For example, young people preferred over older people and humans preferred over pets. However, can people actually act like this? And can we predict who act like this? Because it is not possible to test this in real life, we can use virtual reality to simulate this kind of situations. In another previous VR studies used to investigate this kind of moral decision making that have to choose first between self-sacrifice or sacrifice other pedestrians. In this study found that when number of the pedestrians increased, self-sacrifice ratio was increased. Interestingly, over 5 pedestrians, self-sacrifice ratio does not increase. It means that some of them always sacrifice self and some of them always did not. Why some of them always sacrifice self and some of them always did not? In our previous study, we investigate this kind of decision making in a VR simulated accident situation that we do not inform that the situation and suddenly pedestrians appear on the road and force people to decide. So suddenly, when they just turn the corner, suddenly pedestrians appear, and it's not possible to brake or avoid the situation. Interestingly, in this study, we found that there's 2 decision groups. First, who ignore pedestrians and hit the accelerator, and second group, who try to brake or try to avoid. In our previous study, we found that who ignore pedestrians and hit accelerator have significantly higher psychopathy compared to the groups who did not ignore. So this shows that personality can predict the decision making in an accident situations. So in the present study, we extend our paradigm that have to choose between sacrifice self or sacrifice other pedestrians. So it is you or me choice. So we again use the driver car and suddenly accident situation occur. That first 2 people choose to self-sacrifice or sacrifice other pedestrians. And whole experiment, we measure the whole personality aspect to predict their decision making in an accident situations. So we have some issues for investigation. First, how do we know exactly which decision participants make? So in our experiment, we make multiple crossroads, and participants have to choose one direction at the fork. So one direction, they will fall down to the cliff, and another direction, they will collide with pedestrians. So they have to choose one direction always at the fork. And second, how can we make sure that participants knew the outcome of the decisions? So we give visual and sound information before the event that make sure that participants know that they will fall down when they enter the wrong way. So this make participants make sure about the accident situations. Third, how do we know that decision was not just as simple as to avoid obstacles? So we implement a control condition that use foreign trees as obstacles instead of pedestrians. First, how can we show that situation felt real? So during whole experiment, we measure heart rate to show that kind of effect. So we have three hypotheses. That first, participants will respond differently in experimental and control conditions. Second, participants' decision-making in the emergency situation will correlate with particular personality traits. And third, heart rate changes of the participants will be different across conditions. So method, we recruit total 180 participants and 90 for each condition, and measure whole personality scales that include psychopathy, emotional empathy, personal distress, perspective taking, Machiavellianism, sensation seeking, and impulsivity. And each experiment consists of three types of training that during the training they learn how to drive and how to use visual and sound information. And during the test, suddenly event occur. And when they just choose one direction at the fork, experiment automatically finish after their decisions. And during whole experiment, we use a screen capture program to record their whole gameplay. And also we measure heart rate during whole experiment. And after the test, we ask several questionnaires related to the event situations. So next is video of the experimental conditions that when they just turn the corner, they receive sound and visual information, like fall down to the cliff, and suddenly pedestrians appear on the left side of the road. They first to choose one direction at the fork. So after their decision, their experiment automatically finished. Also in control condition, other things are same. That when they just turn the corner, suddenly they receive the visual and sound information, and suddenly tree falls. And they just choose one direction at the fork, experiment finished. So next is decision result that in experimental conditions, more than half of the people fall down to the cliff, whereas in control condition, only 20% of the participants fall down to the cliff. So this confirms our first hypothesis that participants respond differently on experimental and control conditions. So participants sacrifice more on pedestrian conditions. Next, we investigate the description of the participants that why they decide in the event situations. So first, in experimental conditions, who fell down to the cliff, you can see that lots of the people explain their reasonable behavior come from the pedestrians because they want to avoid pedestrians and they fall down to the cliff. But in chloride group, you can see that their original behavior is related to cliff. So they want to avoid cliff, and they just choose left way. So this shows their original behavior in experimental groups. And also in control groups, you can see that in fall down in control groups, nobody explained their original behavior from trees. So their reason is like just intuitively avoid, or they just consider as signals wrong, or the kind of reason is there why they fall down. But in chloride group, most of them describe that their reason of fall down to the cliff is, reason of the colliding tree is they consider that colliding with trees is safer than fall down to the cliff. And next, we use personality scales to predict decision making in an accident situations. So both board is the significant predictors that in both groups, impulsivity significantly predict decision making, and only psychopathy significantly predict decision making in experimental groups. So this confirms our second hypothesis that participants' decision making in an accident situation was correlated with specific personality traits, especially impulsivity for both conditions and psychopathy for experimental conditions. Next, we investigate the heart rate during the event situation that just investigate the heart rate change during before to the end of the event. And we found that there's some significant difference between experimental and control conditions. So we think that this shows some emotional arousal difference between conditions. However, it decreased, and we think it's really weird, but we found some papers that decrease of the heart rate was occur when they feel some life-threatening situations. So we assume that they feel that kind of feeling, and that's the reason why their heart rate was decreased. However, other decision categories does not different across experimental control conditions. So this also confirms our third hypothesis that heart rate changes of participants different across conditions. So discussion, so we show clear difference between control and pedestrian groups, showing that situation and context matters, and just for personal factors, impulsivity as predictive variable in general, and psychopathy as predictive variable for sacrificing others. And heart rate difference shows some emergent order of the difference across conditions. We do not report in this presentation, however, other factors like gender, video game expertise, driving experience were not predictive of the emergence decision in either groups. So take-home message is VR is a highly useful tool for investigating decision making in extreme situation, and personality seems to be one of key factors influencing our decision making in these situations. Maybe additional factors need to be identified in future research. Right. Thank you for your attention.
So perhaps this is described in the paper, but how did you choose the battery of personality variables that you were interested in for this study?
So like psychopathy and empathy scale, that kind of thing is found from the moral decision-making study that they show some correlation between like a utilitarian decision with psychopathy and empathy scale, and impulsivity and decision-making case, they show to correlate with some accident incidents in car driving. So we choose that because that may be related to car driving behaviors, so we choose that scales.
While everybody's thinking, a quick question for me. Have you considered changing the fidelity of the models? So perhaps the resolution or the realism of the models? And do you think that would affect the participant's heart rate or emotion?
I think maybe have some small effect, but because it have to decide in a very short period of time, I think the effect was not very strong, very small effect.